Hello.
Hi. Hi.
Hello.
Hello, Massimo.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Welcome to this new webinar in a series hosted by the Center for Studies on New Religions and Human Rights Without Frontiers. Today's topic is a very, very important one: democracy, transitional justice, and the Tai Ji Men case. It comes just 2 days after the International Day for Democracy, which was celebrated on September the 15th. The title of this webinar today perfectly highlights 3 core questions of great importance. First, democracy. Democracy has or may have many faults, but it is the most agreeable form of government after the 20th century, the century of totalitarianism, has shown us what an undemocratic world is. But democracy doesn't come free. It needs attention and guardians. 2 of its main ingredients are peace and justice. But peace and justice don't come for free either. The most important requisite for peace and justice is liberty. And we all know that the first liberty of all is religious freedom, which is the first political human right. In sum, no true democracy can be attained without real religious liberty. Of course, the reverse is true as well. A country that denies or curtails religious freedom is a country which endangers democracy for its own citizens and for the whole world. This connects us directly to the third core question in the title of today's webinar, the Tai Ji Men case. Since a quarter of a century, Tai Ji Men is suffering a substantial violation of religious liberty in Taiwan that caused and causes so much sorrow to its Shifu and Dizi, which prevents them to live and worship freely, and which put on them the burden of a high cost also in economic terms. This is not peaceful, and this is not just. So this is not democratic too. Court after court has demonstrated and proved that the Tai Ji Men Shifu and Dizi committed no crime whatsoever. Nonetheless, some officials in the Taiwanese government keep on literally prosecuting Tai Ji Men. This is not peaceful, this is not just, this is not democratic. Doing so, those officials are damaging democracy in Taiwan. Of course, for the Tai Ji Men Shifu and Dizi, but also for every Taiwanese citizen of whatever religion, religious persuasion, and political and cultural orientation. Once democracy is curtailed for one, it is in fact curtailed for everyone. And this is truly threatening, because democracy comes always as a whole, or it doesn't at all. Let me conclude mentioning the second element in our title today, Transitional Justice. It is the middle term in our title, connecting democracy to the Tai Ji Men case. Since democracy and the Tai Ji Men case are, as I just said, strictly tied in themselves, this third connecting element serves as a focus on which kind of specific tie links democracy to Tai Ji Men. Transitional justice is a great opportunity to repair the damages of the past. In the past, Taiwan suffered greatly from the lack of religious liberty. We just heard from the press that symbols and signs from the past regime, are being canceled in Taiwan as part of the transitional justice process. I wonder, and I ask, when transitional justice will complete its work, granting true religious liberty to all, and especially repairing the wrongdoings made by some official of the Taiwanese democratic government to Tai Ji Men, Shifu, and Dizi. Of course, whenever that day comes, it will be always too late, but it must come as soon as possible. The process of transitional justice in Taiwan is a concrete way to secure democracy in the island. But until religious liberty is not completely fulfilled and the Tai Ji Men case closed once and for all, Taiwan, which is a great country, a strong ally to fight great evils in the area, and the promise for the future, will be a country where democracy is unfulfilled and incomplete. Today, we shall hear directly from experts, scholars, activists, and testimonials. It will be a great webinar, in itself a request of justice, peace, and democracy in Taiwan. We now shall begin with an important video. We will see top 10 Taiwanese officials publicly view as they view Tai Ji Men. Thank you.
Tai Ji Men is a manpai of Qigong, martial arts, and self-cultivation that aims to promote the essence of Tai Chi culture and improve the physical, mental, and spiritual health of the people of the world. Since ancient times, this excellent culture has been passed down from Shifu to Dizi. For Tai Ji Men Dizi, practicing Qigong is one of the ways to facilitate self-improvement. Additionally, they have been conducting various forms of culture exchanges to spread the ideas of conscience, love, and peace. Since its inception, Tai Ji Men has never done any fundraisers or accept any public donations. Tai Ji Men Shifu and Dizi have self-funded trips to over 100 nations and presented over 3,000 performances to foster a culture of peace. Their efforts have been widely recognized and highly praised at home and abroad.
For the past 35 years since its founding, your esteemed organization has upheld its objectives of loyalty, filial piety, love of the country, and love of society, uniting like-minded people to promote martial arts, traditional culture, and good social values. It's admirable.
Tai Ji Men is an ancient manpai of Qigong and martial arts passed down from generation to generation. It's like a big warm family. All Dizi are energetic and healthy physically and mentally. Under Zhang Menzhen's leadership, the Dizi not only practice self-cultivation, but also spread kindness to help the world. Through international culture exchanges, they foster love for the world, promoting the idea of love and peace worldwide. On behalf of the government, I would like to take this opportunity to extend my utmost respect and gratitude to you once again. Thank you for your long-term efforts and contributions to our country and society.
Every time
We see Tai Ji Men. We see energy, warmth, and love. We all admire Dr. Hwang's compassion and would like to see Tai Ji Men practice this worldwide. Let Taiwan stand out and let the world come in.
Under the John Menren's leadership, Tai Ji Men has actively participated in international events, conducted citizen diplomacy, and raised Taiwan's global visibility. In the future, I also hope that Tai Ji Men under Dr. Hwang's leadership will continue to work with the government. Let us use our positive influence and move Taiwan forward with continued progress. Let the world see Taiwan.
Tai Ji Men is a menpai of Qigong and martial arts. It's a place for self-betterment and Qigong practice with a focus on teaching loyalty and filial piety.
Tai Ji Men Dizi. You've been contributing your money and efforts with the idea of love and peace, as well as your excellent civil and martial arts. You've created a peaceful and very happy place in the world.
I would like to thank the organizer, Tai Ji Men Qigong Academy, again for its efforts over the years.
I think it is wonderful that Tai Ji Men is able to work with our health department to host this event, New Health Concepts, Total Mobilization Against the SARS.
Be kind, do good deeds, speak kind words. As Tai Ji Men just said, an era of conscience has come.
If we all follow our conscience in everything we do, and the collective power of kindness will definitely improve ourselves, society, and the nation.
On New Year's Day and Taiwan's National Day, we can see Tai Ji Men's brilliant performances. It is arguably the best example and representation of Taiwan's civil society.
We are releasing sky lanterns simultaneously around the world to pray for all humanity. Many Tai Ji Men volunteers assisted in the event.
We, the organizing committee for the National Day, extend our gratitude to all of you again for your efforts and assistance. I extend my heartfelt appreciation to all of you.
In recent years, Tai Ji Men's activities have always been very successful and very inspiring, especially their contribution to culture.
Tai Ji Men's value and the cultural value it promotes do not limit to just traditional culture. The main thing is that it has made positive contributions to society. We hope Tai Ji Men will continue to soar to greater heights.
Human rights are universal values. I think today, through Tai Ji Men's promotion, Taiwan's society will pay more attention to the fundamental human rights.
Tai Ji Men has promoted martial arts and ethics, and projected our nation's arts and culture onto the international stage.
This year, Tai Ji Men is promoting an era of conscience in particular. People need to apply their conscience, do good deeds, and foster social harmony. This is very meaningful. We hope the people of Taiwan will support this movement.
It's truly amazing. Even heaven is bestowing its blessings. Like today, there's wind and sunshine, and the temperature is very good. I saw all participants here were very joyful. It's really rare. Even heaven is helping you.
I'm very grateful for Tai Ji Men's work in civilian diplomacy. Tai Ji Men has always been committed to public welfare. I want to thank you for coming here and adding vitality to the program. This is Tai Ji Men's spirit.
Through this method, we are displaying our traditional culture, sports, and arts in a different way. I think it's very, very good. It's very helpful for us in the international community.
On behalf of the government, I came to present a certificate of recognition to the Zhanmen of Tai Ji Men, Dr. Hong Daozi, for actively participating in international affairs, promoting martial art activities, projecting Taiwan onto the whole world over the years, and especially for enhancing Taiwan's image.
Tai Ji Men itself is the best example. In particular, after their performances during the Sydney Olympics, for many people around the world, when they think of Taiwan, they think of Tai Ji Men.
At the invitation of the city of Seattle, Tai Ji Men participate in the Seafair in Seattle. The top 10 festivals in the United States. Tai Ji Men's tradition is to strengthen the body, cultivate the heart and moral character through Chinese martial arts, and truly demonstrate the profoundity of Chinese culture.
Under the leadership of Dr. Hong Daozi, Tai Ji Men is spreading a message of love and peace not only to Taiwan, but also to the world, so that we can hear a refreshing voice amid the chaos in the world.
Today, we are very thankful that Tai Ji Men Dizi came here. They not only presented performances, but most importantly, this kind of spirit. In fact, that is what Taiwan needs. That is to have confidence. When we apply this kind of kindness and stay serene in the heart, the power will be boundless as tranquility generates wisdom.
Enduring hardship makes one stronger. Tai Ji Men Shifu and Dizi have been persecuted for over 2 decades. Despite this ordeal, they continue to foster love, peace, and conscience around the world. Dr. Rene Wadlow, president of the Association of World Citizens, an NGO associated with the UNDPI, stated that Tai Ji Men has been very active throughout the world to conduct cultural exchanges and promote a culture of love and peace. They have brought people Taiwan's rich cultural life and heritage, and its pursuit of love and peace, especially when their rights have been persecuted for many years. They still choose to continue promoting conscience, love, and peace. This is very exceptional. The Taiwanese government should protect Tai Ji Men and resolve the tax issue in a fair and transparent manner.
We can now proceed to our speakers for today's webinar. And the first one is Professor Massimo Introvigne. Professor Introvigne is the founder of the Center for the Studies on New Religion and the editor-in-chief of Peter Winter magazine. Professor, the floor is yours.
Sorry, my audio was off as usual in this webinar. I will focus today on one part of our title referring to transitional justice, because not everybody can be familiar with what transitional justice is. It's actually the words transitional justice were created after the fall of the Soviet Union and its satellite states and the concomitant fall of some dictatorships in Latin America between the end of the 1980s and the beginning of the 1990s. But the substance of transitional justice existed before, and it actually came from the trials of war criminals and perpetrators of crimes against humanity in Nuremberg and in Tokyo after World War II. When transitional justice was defined mostly by American scholars, one important reference was a decision of 1988 by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights called Velázquez-Rodríguez versus Honduras. And it says that when you pass from non-democratic to a democratic regime, and the previous non-democratic regime has committed atrocities, you should do four things. First, you should make sure that no further human rights abuses are perpetrated. Second, you should ascertain and tell the truth to the citizens. Third, you should punish the perpetrators. And fourth, you should indemnify the victims. In 2001, the International Center for Transitional Justice was founded in New York by a white Methodist ordained elder from South Africa, Alex Boren, who had been very important in setting up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. And this organization has assisted many countries in devising plans for transitional justice, but it has also warned that transitional justice is very difficult. Because if you punish too much the perpetrators in the past regime, it looks like a vengeance or a vendetta, and you can create further social instability. But if you don't punish them at all, the victims will be upset, and that will not be good either. So the problem is always achieving an equilibrium, and we know this very well in Italy. Italy was different from Germany or Japan because Italy had a real civil war where freedom fighters called partisan fought against the fascist regime. So the Allied powers, while in Germany and in Japan, they set up trials against the perpetrators of crimes against humanity. In Italy, they decided they will not do this and let Italians to prosecute those guilty of crimes connected with the fascist regime. But what happened in practice is that Italian partisans and the first institution they created administered very swift justice after mock trial, sometime lasting just 5 minutes, and thousands were executed. Was still the largest military part of the partisan was communist. And the communists decided that Catholic priests and the rich, the bourgeoisie, were co-responsible for the crimes of fascists. So they started also killing Catholic priests and rich people, including some who were clearly innocent and had not committed any crime. So Italy risked a situation with this self-administration of transitional justice of perpetual civil war. And at this stage, a solution was found, and the solution which was found with the blessing of the United States and the Soviet Union was to appoint in June 1945 the General Secretary of the Italian Communist Party and perhaps the closest associate of Stalin in the international communist, called Palmiro Togliatti, as the new Minister of Justice in Italian government. And on June 22, 1946, Togliatti issued what was called the Togliatti Amnesty, which pardoned and made non-prosecutable all crimes committed for political reasons, both by fascists and freedom fighters, at any date before July 31st, 1945. Some especially atrocious crimes were excluded, but even for their the penalties were greatly reduced and the death penalty was excluded. So the communist partisans were not happy to see the fascists go free, but they could not oppose something which had the name of Togliatti. And on the other hand, they also escaped prosecution for crimes they had committed during the Civil War. So today the controversy is still going on. Some are very unhappy about the fact that thanks to the Togliatti amnesty, many who had committed serious crimes were never prosecuted, and others applaud Togliatti's wisdom in avoiding a civil war in Italy. Now, the Italian experience shows that it's very difficult, as I say, to reach an equilibrium between the need to achieve stability and reconciliation and the need to proclaim the truth and punish the perpetrators. Taiwan didn't go through a civil war to achieve its transition to democracy, but the number of crimes committed by the ruling party during the authoritarian and post-authoritarian period, including those connected with the so-called White Terror, was so high that demand for transitional justice by Taiwanese citizens was and remained a key feature of the political scene. It is easily forgotten that non-democratic regimes also commit crimes against form, freedom of religion or belief, and transitional justice is needed in this field too. Taiwan authoritarian regimes violated the religious liberty of various minorities, and such violations continued in the post-authoritarian phase, with the worst crackdown occurring in 1996 and targeting several groups, including Tai Ji Men. And as we all know, as a byproduct of the 1996 crackdown, an illegal tax prosecution against Tai Ji Men continued. So to complete Taiwan's transition to democracy, transitional justice should be rendered with respect to these crimes against form too. The current president of Taiwan, President Tsai, promised a serious and effective approach to transitional justice since her first election in 2016. And for the first time in Taiwan history, this became politically possible because the party who had been in power in the authoritarian and post-authoritarian period, the Kuomintang, lost both the presidents and the majority in the parliament. And in fact, under President Tsai, several laws promoting transitional justice were passed. While this is a good development, a problem with these laws is that they deal only with abuses committed until November 6, 1992, not later. The politically motivated crackdown on several religious minorities in 1996 and the persecution of Tai Ji Men, however, prove that serious human rights abuse continued even after 1992. So transitional justice and a full transition to democracy in Taiwan will only be achieved when post-1992 violations of human rights, including form, will also be investigated and rectified. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Introvigne. We now move on to our next speaker, Ms. Daniela Bovolenta. Ms. Bovolenta is an author at Bitter Winter magazine, and she contributed several articles to other websites and journals connected or devoted to religious liberty. Ms. Bovolenta, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The success of the International Day of Democracy proves that many in the world, at least verbally, profess their loyalty and enthusiasm for democratic values. Things, however, become less clear when we ask the question, what is democracy? Democracy is a Greek word that means government of the people. The Greeks distinguished between three possible forms of governments: monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. They meant that there were three ways to decide who should rule a city or a state. First, a king, in some cases already in ancient times, even a queen, could rule simply because he or she was the closest descendant of the previous monarch. Second, a class of aristocrats, limited in number, may rule. Aristocracy as a system of government did not disappear with ancient times, and an example that lasted into the modern era is the Republic of Venice. Third, the rulers can be periodically elected by the citizens. This third system, democracy, was first developed in the city-state of Athens in the 6th century before the Christian era. It was something new, although only male citizens voted. Women and slaves did not vote, meaning that in practice the government of the city was elected by roughly 1/3 of those who lived there. In fact, women did not vote until the 19th and in many countries the 20th century, with the Grand Duchy of Tuscany in Italy being the first modern state allowing female citizens to participate in administrative election in 1849. This was no mean achievement, considering that, for example, in the United States, women won the right to vote only in 1920. The Catholic Church has been among the moral authorities which have insisted that no system to choose the rulers guarantees justice automatically, although in recent times it was also stated that democracy with universal suffrage may be the most effective model for modern societies characterized by a large degree of social, cultural, religious, and sometimes ethnic pluralism. However, both religious authorities and scholars agree that elections where all citizens are entitled to vote are not enough to call a country democratic. For example, North Korea's official name is the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea, and its propaganda claims that it is the most democratic country in the world. Elections are regularly held, and the ruling party, formerly a coalition of parties, used to gather 99% of the votes. Until in 2017, it decided this was not good enough and reached 100% of the votes. Also, North Korean elections have the record number of voters in the world, 99.9%, which is not surprising considering that those who don't vote are arrested and may even be executed. Few people would accept that this is a real democracy. In fact, scholars believe that a country becomes democratic at the time of its third transition in power from one party to another. In Taiwan, this third transition happened in 2016, although the martial law had been abrogated in 1987, making the period between 1987 and 2016 a transitional one. However, the Tai Ji Men case in Taiwan is a good mirror where we can look at democracy and see that even a rotation between parties are not enough to find in a country a full-blown democracy. Scholars know that democracy requires a separation of powers, not only in the constitution, but in practice. The Tai Ji Men case and other cases of tax injustice proved that in Taiwan, neither the legislative power nor the judiciary power really controls the branch of the executive power dealing with taxes. The parliament told many times the National Taxation Bureau, NTB, that it should solve the Tai Ji Men case by acknowledging that Tai Ji Men was not guilty of tax evasion, and that the gifts given by the Dizi disciples to the Shifu master were not taxable. The National Taxation Bureau ignored the parliament. Courts of law told several times the National Taxation Bureau that the tax bills issued against Tai Ji Men came from faulty criminal charges, of which Dr. Hwang and his co-defendants were innocent and should be withdrawn. The judiciary power was ignored too. This demonstrates that in Taiwan, something is still wrong with the separation of powers and as a consequence with democracy. I am not arguing this is a problem in Taiwan only. Taxes are an extremely complicated matter. Even courts of law may not totally understand them, and the tax administration is based, again, not only in Taiwan, on explanatory letters and administrative orders on which the parliaments have little or no control. However, when, as it happened in the Tai Ji Men case, the parliaments and the judiciary are unable to control the tax administration, another essential feature of democracy is compromised, its ability to protect the citizens' human rights. For this reason, the International Day of Democracy offers to all of us a worthy opportunity to honor the fight of Tai Ji Men. They fight for all of us. In the words of the 17th century British poet John Donne, which many known because they were quoted by American novelist Ernest Hemingway, any injustice is a bell that rings, whose song we should learn to listen to. Therefore, Donne wrote, "Never send to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for you." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bovolenta, also for quoting John Donne, one of my personally favorite metaphysical poets. We now pass on our next welcome speaker, Dr. Patricia Duval. Dr. Duval is an attorney and member of the Paris Bar in France. Dr. Duval, the floor is yours. We may have some problems with the audio. Maybe Dr. Duval is muted, isn't she?
Dr. Duval, you have to unmute. Your speaker is. You have to unmute.
Yeah, Patricia, you are muted. You need to unmute yourself, to click on the micro to unmute. We don't hear you.
It should be on your left in the bottom.
Hear me now?
Yeah, we can. So the floor is yours.
Okay, sorry. It was asking for my authorization in a corner, which I had not seen. Okay. Yes. So you didn't hear anything about what I said, right? Okay. I said I am, I've been informed lately of this case of Tai Ji Men. And, but I am very, I want to make a first comment because I think it's very appalling. And my first comment is just, I find it very surprising, if not shocking to me as an outsider, that Taiwanese authorities would take the risk to be assimilated with China in their policy towards minorities of religion or belief, in particular spiritual minorities. I'm thinking in particular of Falun Gong, which is a group that...
Hey, Patricia, if I can interrupt you one moment, there is a gentleman here called Shaunta, Dalugamaj, and he needs to mute himself. Perfect, you can continue. Because otherwise you had the return of this gentleman and we couldn't hear you very well, but we heard you, so continue.
Did you hear what I was saying?
Yes.
Yes, we did. You can really
Yeah.
continue.
What I was saying is, in particular, I was thinking of the China's policy towards Falun Gong and their members and their followers, and the harsh repression, because this group is also a group of spiritual self-improvement and physical practices and meditation and all that. And we all know what is happening with China and Falun Gong. There are UN reports on the horrors they commit towards their members. Of course, in Taiwan, I see this is not the case. It doesn't go to those extremes, but I'm still very, very surprised that the Taiwanese authorities would take the risk of internationally being pointed out as following the steps of China in their policy towards minorities of religion or belief. This was just my first comment out of the blue from an outsider. Now, coming to this case, my second comment is that, of course, as everybody has said it or knows here, the anti-cult movement has been pushing in various countries in the world for decades. They have been pushing governments to repress minorities of religion or belief seen as undesirable, and in particular through financial harassment. This has been the case in particular in France, where I'm coming from, and it has given rise to decisions by the European Court of Human Rights, which I know have already been mentioned, but I would like to shed a light on certain points. First, I would like to say, well, of course, we have the European Convention for the members of the Council of Europe, which has its equivalent with the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which has been, I understand, ratified unilaterally by Taiwan and incorporated into its national law. While both have articles protecting freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, Article 9 of the Convention has also, and Article 18 of the Covenant, they both have a second part of their articles stating what limitations are possible to bring to this freedom of religion and belief, and in particular to its manifestation. What the European Court says about Article 9 is that freedom of thought, conscience, and religion represents one of the foundations of a democratic society within the meaning of the Convention. It is, in its religious dimension, one of the most vital elements that go to make the identity of believers and the conception of life. But it's also a precious asset for atheists, agnostics, skeptics, and the unconcerned. The pluralism indissociable from a democratic society, which has been dearly won over the centuries, depends on it, which means that there is no democracy without pluralism. And this is, I mean, Article 9 is not just one of the articles of the Convention. It is really the foundation of a democratic society, which I wanted to stress here because of the circumstances of the case. And also, so now what is included in this protection? It says, if a person, what is a belief protected by the convention? If a personal or collective conviction is to benefit from the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, it must attain a certain level of cogency, seriousness, cohesion, and importance. Provided this condition is satisfied, the state's duty of neutrality and impartiality is incompatible with any power on the state's part to assess the legitimacy of religious beliefs or the ways in which those beliefs are expressed. So there is no, well, there's Article 18 similarly protects, in the covenant, protects beliefs interpreted very broadly, understood very broadly. So there's no doubt that spiritual groups or minorities of belief are protected and benefit from the whole protection of the international instruments. Now, the European Court, when applied this Article 9 to the protection of Article 9 to the Jehovah's Witnesses in the case they had against France, and ruled in 2011 that there had been a violation of Article 9.2, that is to say that the limitation, the interference with their right to manifest their beliefs was not in agreement was illegal because it did not respect Article 9.2 of the convention. And what is of interest here is that the court drew a picture of the background of the scene in France. And it is interesting because it happened in 1996, like for the Tai Ji Men. And I can read just 2 paragraphs because it's of interest. It said, first, the Jehovah's Witnesses were included in a list as a cult in a list drafted by Parliament, and then they were stigmatized as a cult because there were hundreds of religious groups or non-religious groups included in the list, and they were part of it. And then the court says, in this context, the applicant was subject to a tax audit, which started in November 95 and lasted until January 99. At the end of the investigation, the not-for-profit nature of the activities of the applicant was confirmed. During the debate on the report of the Inquiry Commission on Sect at the National Assembly, because then they created an inquiry commission on sects and money, the Minister of Budget stated the following about, he was talking about tax audits being a tool for repressing minorities of religion or belief they were labeling as cults. And so the Minister of Budget stated, the audit can result in judicial proceedings or criminal prosecution against the leaders of the cult, which can destabilize the functioning of the association or put it under the obligation to cease its activities in our territory. Tax audit can therefore be the first step in a process that profoundly disrupts the cult or leads to its dissolution. So it was openly stated that they wanted to eliminate all the groups, minorities that were listed in the report. It is interesting, it is very good actually, that the court included it in the introduction and the background of the decision. because what happened afterwards was that the tax administration did a tax audit and saw all these manual gifts received by the Jehovah's Witnesses, a bit like the red envelopes of Tai Ji Men. And then they started to say that these manual gifts were all taxable at 60% over a certain amount of years. And finally, it ended up with the tax administration claiming 55 million euros from Jehovah's Witnesses, 2/3 of which being penalties and default interest because they didn't pay while challenging the decisions in court. So the court looked at whether first, well, there was an interference with their right to practice their religion because they would have been bankrupt and could not practice their religion anymore. So there was no doubt that there was an interference. And then it came to the second step, examining whether the limitation brought the interference was provided by law, because Article 9 or Article 18 provide that freedom to manifest one's religion or beliefs may be subject only to such limitations as are prescribed by law and are necessary to protect a certain limited number of things like public safety, order, health, or morals, all the fundamental rights and freedoms of others. By the way, here, national security is not a possible limitation. That's just a parenthesis because Russia has included this in their policy, but it's not permitted by the international human rights instrument. Anyway, so the court examined whether the freedom to the interference with Jehovah's Witnesses' right to practice their religion had been prescribed by law and was necessary in a democratic society, but first prescribed by law. It found that it was not prescribed by law, and then it didn't go to examine whether it was necessary in a democratic society. Anyway, as to being prescribed by law, what happened was that the French administration used an article of the tax code on manual gifts, which was designed originally at donations between individuals for inheritance purposes or that kind of stuff. And the article provided that if the donation was included in a deed or in a judiciary decision or was revealed by the donor to the administration, then it would be taxable. However, first, this article had never been applied to legal entities, but only to individuals. And second, most importantly, the understanding, the interpretation of the tax administration was that the administration discovering these gifts through a tax audit constituted a revelation, as if the person had revealed it to the administration. But the European Court said this interpretation had never been done before. It didn't say arbitrary, but it meant it. And that consequently, the applicant had not been able to foresee at a reasonable degree the consequences resulting from the collection of donations and the providing of its accounts to the tax administration. Therefore, the interference was not provided by law in the meaning of Article 9.2 of the Convention. So why am I saying this? Is because there's the equivalent in Article 18.3 of the Covenant about being provided by law. And I read in the papers done by Massimo that more than 9,500 explanatory letters and orders of the Ministry of Finance govern the tax administration. The explanatory letters and orders go beyond the law. This is completely against international human rights law because in order to be provided by law, it should be foreseeable by the citizens. And in this case, nothing was foreseeable. To the contrary, it was an interpretation that was contrary to what had been done until then, to my understanding. So I wanted to stress the Jehovah's Witnesses case in this regard. And now there has been also other decisions followed against France concerning other religious minorities, and the European Court condemned France for on the same basis of Article 9.2, and that the limitations, the financial harassment was not provided by law. Now there's another ground which the European Court has used for condemning financial harassment of religious or belief minorities, which is discrimination. And it's Article 14 of the Convention and 26 of the case of Jehovah's Witnesses of Austria versus Austria of 2012. The court found that the refusal to grant an exemption from inheritance and tax and gift tax which was based on the grounds that the applicant community was not a recognized religious society, actually constituted a violation of Article 19 read in the light of Article 9, because in Austria they have a two-tier system of registration of religious groups, and which is in itself a discrimination. But anyway, so they have recognized religious societies and registered religious organizations, and the fact that the Jehovah's Witnesses were refused an exemption of gift tax on this basis constituted discrimination. So it's another ground also which can be found in the covenant that can be used, because I read in the papers that in Taiwan there are tens of thousands of martial arts and religious organizations, and no other master is taxed for accepting disciples' monetary gifts or alms. So this is, for a lawyer, it means right away discrimination. I'm sure the Taiwanese lawyers have raised all these questions, but all these points during their procedures. But from an external viewpoint, I have to say that I wanted to stress another point that I forgot, which is that under international human rights law, it is a right to raise funding. It's part of the freedom of religion or belief. In the 1981 Declaration of the General Assembly, Article 6b goes, the right to freedom of thought, conscious religion or belief includes the freedom to establish and maintain appropriate charitable or humanitarian institutions. And 6f, The right to freedom of thought, conscience, religion, or belief includes the freedom to solicit and receive voluntary financial and other contributions from individuals and institutions. So part of freedom of religion or belief includes the right to raise funds to maintain the group and to allow the practice of such religion or belief. So to conclude, in my view, as an outsider, I understand that the decision concerning 1992 might be final and the facts time barred, but if the consequences of the implementation now of that decision are so severe for and infringe so severely the freedom of Tai Ji men to practice their beliefs or spirituality, then it should not be under the international covenant. It should not be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Duval, for your articulated analysis. And it is now my pleasure to pass the floor to Mr. Willy Fautré, Director and co-founder of Human Rights Without Frontiers in Brussels. He will also lead the next section of our today's webinar, introducing later on, after his speech, our testimonies. So, Mr. Fautré, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Marco. Just a very brief introduction to say that democracy is the cornerstone of the rule of law and human rights. And Taiwan is a democratic country, but like any other democratic country, it's not perfect. Laws and their implementation need to be scrutinized and sometimes corrected. This is the mission of civil society, and those who carry out this mission often remain unknown and invisible. It will be my pleasure today to introduce a number of those activists who work in one way or another in the shadow to shed light on undemocratic practices in order to improve the image of their country, Taiwan. But before giving the floor to the first speaker, I would like you to watch a video titled "1 Year After Our Land Was Confiscated." And then I will come back to the presentation of the next speakers. Thank you.
The tax bills in violation of due process have been invalid from the very beginning. The Tai Ji Men tax case originated from the unlawful indictment of prosecutor Quan Ren-ho, who transferred the case to the National Taxation Bureau, NTB, for taxation. The NTB knew that in the indictment of the prosecutor claimed the money in question was proceeds of fraud, but he also claimed the same money as tuition income from a Korean school. His claims were clearly contradictory. The NTB issued the tax bills before the criminal court determined the nature of the income. The NTB imposed taxes and heavy penalties simply based on their indictment without fulfilling its duty to investigate the matter. This seriously violated due process of law.
Did the NTB complete its investigation? The criminal case was still ongoing, and the NTB had already sent out the tax bills. That violated due process. The dispositions in violation of due process were unlawful.
I've studied the Tai Ji Men tax case for close to 2 years. I've written an article about the Tai Ji Men tax case. I don't think I've seen more abuse of the right of due process in any situation than I have seen in the Tai Ji Men tax case. It is not due process for the Ministry of Education to determine that Tai Ji Men is not a cram school and for prosecutors and tax authorities to disregard that determination. It is not due process for the NTB to issue tax bills and to continue to issue tax bills based on allegations of an indictment that have been thrown out in 3 separate criminal trials. It is not due process to have the interagency group get together from all of the different departments of Taiwan to finally address the persecution of Tai Ji Men and agree on a process for doing that through a survey and then falsify the results of that survey. That is not due process. And it is not due process for the Taipei High Administrative Court and the Supreme Administrative Court to rule in favor in Tai Ji Men and then do what? Send it back to the same individuals and authority that issued the tax bills in the first place and collected bonuses for those tax bills. It is not due process to be caught on this treadmill of remand by the administrative courts back to the Ministry of Finance and back again, and this never-ending treadmill where individuals at the ministry or any other tax officials can reissue the same bills time and time again and causing taxpayers time, money, and concern for decades. I think that a 20-year ordeal is a violation of human rights. Justice delayed is justice denied. And to delay justice for 20 years and to still not have it, as we're sitting here today, is, in my mind, a denial of justice. And the thing that perplexes and even disturbs me is the fact that that justice has been denied and delayed by just a few individuals. It is appalling to me that those few individuals could hijack an entire government.
On July 13, 2007, the Criminal Division of the Supreme Court found Dr. Hwang and his co-defendants not guilty of fraud, tax evasion, or violation of the Tax Collection Act. The Supreme Court also determined that the red envelopes to Dr. Hwang were gifts from Dizi and were tax-free income under Article 4, subparagraph 17 of the Income Tax Act. The group procurement of uniforms and other items through mutual assistance among the Dizi was not for profit sale and hence not a taxable event.
When deciding the first trial of the Tai Ji Men case, I emphasized respect of human dignity, freedom of religion or belief, and freedom of thought. I think these values should be honored in tax law as well. The first, second, and third trials all rule the nature of the money in question as gifts. Then it should not be a tax as tuition for a cram school.
Because he thinks this is a respect for the master. It is a kind of gift. After the third instance of our court, we discussed in detail where the indictment is unacceptable. If the tax authority uses this indictment as the basis for taxation, I think it is questionable.
According to the decision issued by the Criminal Court of the Judicial System, the nature of the red envelopes given to the Shifu was determined to be gifts rather than income. Therefore, there is no income tax issue. The administrative agency has no reason to not involve the facts determined in a criminal decision.
You can go to the Control Yuan's website and see that I have listed 7 corrections with respect to the NTB's handling of the Tai Ji Men case. For each, the Tax Bureau's response was, "Oh, we made a mistake. I told the Finance Minister in 2011, I believe this case should be closed."
The Tai Ji Men case of injustice was instigated by the prosecutor's office to divert the public's attention from two unsolved political murder cases. In the Tai Ji Men case, the charges of fraud and tax evasion were contradictory to each other. The defendants were found not guilty of fraud, tax evasion, or violation of the Tax Collection Act by the Supreme Court, and the state compensation for unjust detention was awarded. In 2007, the third instance court decision concluded that the red envelopes given by the Dizi to Dr. Hwang were gifts and thus tax-free under Article 4, subparagraph 17 of the Income Tax Act. It was all clearly stated, but the NTB taxed Tai Ji Men as a crime school and imposed taxes on the tax-free income. The NTB clearly violated the tax law. According to our tax law, gift tax is paid by the person given the gift, not by the recipient. The subject and object of taxation and the applicable law were all wrong. The original judgment on a criminal case must be annulled when it involves these kinds of errors. The administrative sanctions must be revoked, as they should not have existed.
The NTB taxed the tax-free gifts as Dr. Hwang's income. The NTB also levied sales tax on Dr. and Mrs. Hwang for the group procurement among the Dizi, which was not for profit sale and had nothing to do with Mr. and Mrs. Hwang. The NTB has imposed taxes on the wrong party and on non-taxable events. Its tax dispositions involve an error of fact and an error of law. Therefore, the tax bills have been invalid from the very beginning.
Thank you very much for those who have prepared this video, which is a very powerful testimony and example of denial of justice by Taiwan that needs to be corrected without any delay. And I will now give the floor to Professor Tsan-Tu, Assistant Professor of the Department of Law at the Alentheia University in Taiwan. Professor, yeah.
Good day, everyone. I'm in Taiwan. I used to be a judge and now work as a professor at a university. I would like to take a judge's perspective on the Tai Ji Men case. First and foremost, I would like to discuss the context of the Tai Ji Men case. The first, second, and third criminal decisions all found Tai Ji Men not guilty. The not guilty decisions show that there isn't a tax problem. However, taxes were levied on Tai Ji Men by Taiwan's National Taxation Bureau of the Central Area from 1991 to 1995. No tax should be charged on Tai Ji Men because of the not guilty decisions were issued. They were comparable situations, or perhaps the same case, for the 5 tax years. Finally, the years 1991, 1993, 1994, and 1995 were declared to be tax-free. The National Taxation Bureau, on the other hand, upheld the 1992 tax bill. This contradicts itself. Since 1992 is no different from the other years, why was Tai Ji Men subjected to taxation for that particular year? The underlying facts for the 5 years were the same. When the Taxation Bureau made a mistake, it could revoke the tax bill itself under Article 117 of Taiwan's Administrative Procedure Act. I believe that the Taxation Bureau were able to revoke the tax bills for the 4 years mentioned earlier because it followed Article 117 of Taiwan's Administrative Procedure Act. Even if the tax authorities do not revoke the tax bills on their own, the people can request revocation through Article 128 of Taiwan's Administrative Procedure Act. There is a question over whether the 5-year statute of limitations applies in this case. Since the start of the case, more than 5 years have passed. Why is there a 5-year statute of limitations? This is a point of contention. Our government agencies have clearly made a mistake and should correct it on their own. As a result, the paragraph about Taiwan's 5-year statute of limitations is quite contentious. I believe that the law should be altered, particularly when the executive branch makes a mistake that needs to be remedied. There is also the issue of recusal in the 1992 tax case. During the trial in the Taichung High Administrative Court, Tai Ji Men sought that the 1992 tax bill be cancelled, but a judge whose last name is Hwang had completed the inquiry process, but had not yet given a ruling. She was then sent to the Supreme Administrative Court, which is a higher court. The appointed judge who followed her made a ruling on the case without first conducting an investigation. This is a dubious practice. Tai Ji Men's appeal was rejected by Judge Hwang, who handled the case in a lower court and heard it again in the Supreme Administrative Court. A judge cannot hear the same case in a higher court if he or she participated in judging it in a previous trial, according to Taiwan's Administrative Procedure Act. The rationale for this is to keep a judge from being swayed by his or her preconceived notions about a case. To put it another way, it is designed to prevent a judge who has already made a mistake from repeating it in a higher court. It is difficult for a court to make an unbiased conclusion if the same judge hears a litigant's case in both the first and second trials, and this is a particularly questionable component of the Tai Ji Men case. Despite the fact that a final judgment on the matter was rendered, the National Taxation Bureau of the Central Area had already corrected the taxes to 0 for 4 of the 5 years. The final decision on the 1992 tax bill is questionable. Why is there a retrial in a court of law for a matter that has already been decided? Judges are human and they can make mistakes. As a result, we have recourse. To protect people's basic rights, a judge should not be allowed to judge the same case in both lower and higher courts. An administrative matter will be forwarded to the Administrative Enforcement Agency for enforcement after a decision is made. The requirements of Taiwan's enforcement law are implemented since the applicable rules are insufficient. In other words, the auction can only take place if the seizure is legal. The parties have the right to object the enforcement agency's enforcement and to express their dissatisfaction with specific features of the enforcement. Tai Ji Men had already communicated its dissatisfaction in the Tai Ji Men case, but the enforcement officers failed to investigate the situation and failed to follow the standard enforcement procedure. Finally, if no one bids during the auction, subsequent auctions should be held. According to previous auctions, the enforcement agency would generally hold 3 or 4 auctions initially, and if no acceptable bids were received, it would then ask the creditor, in this case the National Taxation Bureau, if it would like to assume the property. The enforcement agency, on the other hand, asked the National Taxation Bureau to assume the property in the Tai Ji Men case, after only 2 unsuccessful auctions. This is completely out of the ordinary, and it raises the question of whether the administrative authorities fail to follow the appropriate laws and regulations when conducting the auctions. This leads us to believe that the entire process did not adhere to the relevant laws and regulations. As a result, I believe the enforcement agency's handling of the matter was highly problematic. Thanks to Tai Ji Men's hard work and advocacy over the years, we hope that the incomplete provisions of the law mentioned earlier can be corrected by amending the law so that justice can be done to the people.
I'd like to thank Professor Tsan-Tu, who is a former judge, as he said, for his clear explanation and impartial analysis about the abusive way that the case was really fabricated against Tai Ji Men. And now I want to introduce another speaker, Professor Giin-Tarng Hwang, professor at the Department of Political Science at the National Taiwan University. The floor is yours, Professor.
Hi everyone, my name is Giin-Tarng Hwang. I got my JD in Germany and currently am teaching in the Political Science Department in National Taiwan University. It's an honor to be invited to participate in today's seminar to talk about democracy and rule of law in the International Day of Democracy. It is also an issue about human rights. Every country has different stages of development. At the earlier stages, when the laws are not perfectly regulated, there are always loopholes for unjust cases which will cause great damage to innocent people, either financially or personally. The violation of state power may be very significant. There is such an infamous case in Taiwan, the Tai Ji Men tax case. It was fabricated by a prosecutor, and the Taiwanese National Taxation Bureau issued unlawful tax bills based on his indictment, claiming the gift money to the master should be considered income for cram schools. The National Taxation Bureau only issued tax bills for 6 years, 1991 through 1996, of which 5 years of the bills were rescinded in 2019, through the efforts of the Tai Ji Men Dizi as well as several scholars, lawyers, legislatures, and officials. But the tax bill from 1992 still remains to this date. Why couldn't the National Tax Bureau ex officio treat 1992 like the other years? Even though the court has already made a definitive judgment in the case, based on the fact and process of this case and the opinions of the authorities in charge, it is indeed an unjust case. For example, the original prosecution for tax evasion was later ruled not guilty. The Ministry of Education also released an official letter stating that Tai Ji Men is not a cram school. Moreover, the Control Yuan also issued an investigation report as well. The NTB also conducted a public survey in accordance with the conclusion of a cross-ministerial meeting hosted by the Secretary General of the Executive Yuan, and the NTB also corrected the tax bill accordingly. Now, only the year 1992 remains. Therefore, competent authority should handle the tax bill of 1992 in the same way and revoke it ex officio. But just because the administrative court has already made a definitive judgment in the case, the Administrative Enforcement Agency is unwilling to override the decision and cancel the original tax sanctions. Here's the concern. If the NTB can override the decision already made by the administrative court, will there be any violation of the separation of powers? It will also open the door to many more cases like that and cause great impact to the whole system. The only concern is with the treatment of the 1 year left, the year 1992, as there's a definitive judgment. We would suggest for the authority to make a proper explanation for this special case in the application of the law. In fact, the administrative agency is allowed to resume administrative procedure or revoke the case in accordance with Article 117 of Administrative Procedure Act. From a macro perspective, all countries go through different stages of development. The earlier stage, we call it an authoritarian state or post-authoritarian state. During this period of authoritarianism, the entire executive or administrative power, the judicial power, its organizational personnel, its behavioral norms, rules, and culture were relatively rough. This will result in injustice and harm the rights of the people. When we talk about a new stage of national development, the rise of human rights awareness, and the deepening of democracy, I believe the deepening of democracy in Taiwan is visible for all countries. That Taiwan's human rights performance is also visible to many countries. But our government keeps slacking off. Just because a definitive judgment, the administrative agency is afraid, National Taxation Bureau is afraid. They did not dare to revoke the original administrative disposition. The superiors of the NTB, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Justice, and the head of the Executive Yuan are also afraid. Our president is also afraid. Frankly speaking, they don't really understand that democracy is progressive, that it develops, and that there are several stages, and that the rule of law is the same. After reaching a new stage of development, we must have the courage to go back and address the flaws of the previous stage and process known as transformational justice. Transformative justice is not only about the political injustices of the earlier stages of political persecution, but also about the injustices of the executive and the judiciary due to the limitations of the human resources, the organization, the system, and the culture at the time. So the meaning of democracy is equal to the rule of law and human rights. They are separate but interlocking powers. The whole world's democracy continues to develop, and the values of the concept of democracy as a whole and even the relevant judgments and all kinds of ideas are the right path for human beings. I think that those in power should have the courage to review the problems of the previous stage. President Tsai Ing-wen, the head of the Executive Yuan, the Minister of Justice, and the Ministry of Finance must face this problem.
Thank you very much for this very interesting analysis, and it is indeed political will that is needed to solve this problem. I would now like to introduce the next speaker, who is Tai Ji Men Dizi. Her name is Eva Mao. Eva, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm very honored to participate in today's international forum. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Eva, and I'm a Tai Ji Men Dizi. My family and I have joined Tai Ji Men for 28 years. December 19th, 1996 marked the beginning of a series of unlawful treatments that prosecutor Hwang inflicted upon Tai Ji Men. That all started because of an untruthful reporting. I remember that day when I just got home from school, and as I turned on the TV, the shocking news came into my sight right away. December 19th became the day that I will never forget. I was only 6. At that time, the untruthful news is on almost every channel and in all the newspaper. If people around you knew that you were Tai Ji Men Dizi, they would look at you strangely, and they would even make some harmful and sarcastic comments against you. I remember when I was playing the ball with my cousin, she didn't catch the ball and the ball hit her. And her mom saw it. She rushed to us and shouted. She said, "Hey, be careful, she will hurt you. She's practicing Tai Ji Men Qigong." I was only 6. How could I understand why people would abuse such a good organization? Because in Tai Ji Men, my Shifu always teach me to strengthen my health and cultivate my mind. So why would my relatives say that to me? But I'm very grateful to my Shifu, Shimu, brothers and sisters, and my parents for insisting on doing the right thing, which is continuing to stay in Tai Ji Men and leading me on the right path of life. My Shifu, Dr. Hwang, has been devoting himself to promoting Tai Ji Men's culture of love, peace, and conscience for the purpose of people's physical, mental, and spiritual health. His footsteps of spreading love and peace have covered the 5 continents in the world. I grew up following Shifu's wisdom to cultivate myself. And I also have many opportunities to participate in cultural exchanges of public welfare activities held both in Taiwan and overseas. Even though we have been persecuted for so many years, my Shifu still teaches his Dizi to love our country, love the people, and love the world. After 10 years and 7 months, on July 13, 2007, the court has finally returned the justice to us with non-guilty verdicts of no fraud, no tax evasions, and no violation of tax codes in all 3 hearings. However, the National Taxation Bureau has continued to issue unjustified tax bills. It's been 25 years. Those years should have been the most carefree time of my life, but instead they were spent under the oppression of our government. What is even more outrageous is that the National Taxation Bureau of Taipei and Central Area corrected the tax bills of 1991 and 1993 to 1996 to zero, except the year 1992's similarly unlawful tax bill. And last year, in August 21st, the enforcement agency illegally auctioned the property, the land of Tai Ji Men. This obviously violated the international covenants such as the ICCPR and ICESCR, and the constitutional principle of equality and the protection of litigation rights, including the freedom of religious belief and cultural rights of Tai Ji Men Dizi were also severely violated. We were persecuted by the government for 25 years. The Tai Ji Men unjust tax case is not the only case that has been persecuted. After I participated in the legal tax reform movement, I found that too many tax victims were persecuted and even lost their lives. The law and tax issue not only persecuted human rights, but also affects the economy of Taiwan. I once saw an article in Commonwealth magazine on the internet, and its title was $30 to live for 3 weeks. Taiwanese youth lifelong income is lower than the previous generation. In the beginning of the article, it mentioned they have the best educational opportunities and substantial life, but they have become the generation with the lowest income. Reading this passage, I feel sad and helpless because the generation that mentioned in the article is my generation. And I'm very fortunate to be born in a well-off family. My father is an entrepreneur and runs his business quite well. Thus, he can support my sister and me to study abroad. I still remember that after graduating and working in the United States for a period of time, I encountered problems that all international students would encounter: stay or return to Taiwan. A seemingly simple question may be enough to affect our future. Many students mentioned that the reason for not returning to Taiwan were the poor working environment and poor salary. Some of my friends, they chose to stay in the US and others went to China. And I finally chose to return to Taiwan, mainly because I hope to be able to accompany my parents and also contribute to my father's company. During several business trips and meetings with Germans and some Europeans and Chinese, I deeply realized that the resources available to Taiwan from all parties are getting less and less due to the huge Chinese market. Many suppliers put more effort on developing Chinese market. China's large lands, numerous talents, and the rise of the market are inevitable factors that make them stronger and stronger. However, in my parents' generation, although Taiwan is small, we had created many economic miracles. Back then, Taiwan could do it. Why can't it now? The reason was actually just mentioned, including brand drain and the Taiwan market that has prevented many foreign investors from investing. In recent years, the United Nations published the World Investment Report, and Taiwan's ranking in attracting foreign investment has gradually fallen back in Asia. The amount of investment is only 1/3 of Vietnam and one half of the Philippines. The Lausanne School of Management in Switzerland has also announced that the 3 major reasons for the low competition in Taiwan are government effectiveness, tax competitiveness, and legal environments. So various statistics show that we in Taiwan are facing industrial relocation, brand drain, and low salaries, causing young people to give up marriage, childbirth, buying houses, and even their dreams and hopes. Taiwan is in a crisis of rapid collapse. The key lies in Taiwan's deteriorating legal and taxation environment. Therefore, it is urgent for the Taiwan government to resolve wrongful and false tax cases and to return people's justice, such as resolving Tai Ji Men case, a landmark case in this regard. Over the past 25 years, Tai Ji Men Dizi have gone through all kinds of remedy and petition in Taiwan, but still cannot obtain justice and ratification. Recently, Tai Ji Men Dizi in the United States have carried out petitioning protests across the United States, hoping to tell the Taiwan government through international forces that the case must be rectified immediately. Officials who violate the law should be held accountable to prevent the unscrupulous officials from continuing to harm the people and Taiwan's international images. Today, I'm here to participate in this forum because I really want to let the world know that the people of Taiwan are being persecuted for human rights and need your assistance. I want to ask the Taiwan government to protect people's freedom of belief and human rights, rectify the unjust tax case immediately, and return Tai Ji Men's property. I also want to call on the government to face the legal and tax issues and make pragmatic reforms. Otherwise, there will be no future for Taiwan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva, for your testimony and your passionate involvement in this case. And as we could hear, that's a whole generation that has been affected by the denial of justice imposed on Tai Ji Men. The next speaker will be Clyde Chien, a retired computer hardware company in Taiwan, and is a Tai Ji Men Dizi. The floor is yours, Clyde.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. And now start my sharing of observation. In year 2016, me and my wife became Dizi of Dr. Hwang and started to practice Qigong to improve health. I had been retired from one multinational company for 7 years at a time. Very soon, I joined the campaign of fighting for justice for the faulty, unjust Tai Ji Men case, as well as for the serious fundamental value of Taiwan judicial, taxation, and administrative functions. Why would I do that? To me, it's absolutely must. There are 4 facts. First, in 2002, the Control Yuan initiated the investigation of Tai Ji Men case, concluded and declared 8 major illegal acts conducted by Prosecutor Hwang, and demanded the Ministry of Justice to hold him responsible and be penalized. Second, in 2007, the Supreme Court found Tai Ji Men not guilty for all charges, no violation of Tax Collection Act. Third, in 2010, during the hearing at Legislative Yuan, the Deputy Minister of Finance agreed to a panel to withdraw the outstanding bills within 2 months, but failed to do so. Lastly, in 2011, the cross-departmental review called by Executive Yuan resolved to conduct public survey of character of red envelope related to Tai Ji Men case. 7,401 replies survey all stated red envelope being gift. National Tax Bureau ignored this result, initiated by its superior office, and continue its tax billing issue. Received all these clear messages from 3 out of 5 Yuans, judicial, legislative, and control Yuan. 2 ministries under Executive Yuan can simply ignore them completely and disobey their superior command as well. To me, what is happening in this country, in my life of career, I really didn't notice this kind of thing happening around me. The astonishing fact to me is that Tai Ji Men case is just one tiny spot of a huge iceberg. The illness of the system goes deep and broad, which negatively impacts the entire nation already. Allow me to illustrate for our foreign friends who care about Tai Ji Men and care about Taiwan by starting from the nation's financial source, tax aspect. I think it's clear currently still, almost every nation worldwide depends on taxes as major revenue of the government. Financial resources is key to a nation's strength. One ancient advice for rulers in China says, for the wealth of your nation, for a peaceful life of your people. In Chinese is 国富民安. Provided both of public and private wealth of a nation being sufficient continuously, this goal can be achieved. To expect the public part of resources be always abundant, and with the fact that most of it depends on taxes, it's then clear that the tax system of a nation needs to be designed with intelligence. First, you have to maintain, in order to maintain vibrant economy momentum, among other things, you need a competitive mindset central and strategic tax strategy, which aim at A, tax rates stays competitive with global and especially regional countries. You need to evaluate global economy status, industry, technology developments, your own strengths and weakness, adjust the structure accordingly as necessary. Making sure tax incomes diversify, tax base needs to be abundant as top priority. And the utilization of this revenue needs to be efficient and cover social justice. Second, with all that done, National Treasury policy needs to pursue balanced budget and surplus, avoid corruption, avoid in debt. It is all interconnected. The role of taxation and treasury function of a nation should not be passive. Their role is to actively participate with other parts of government functions and be equally responsible for economic growth, long-term financial health of a nation. This is supposed to be. Well, the reality appears not developed as wished. History recorded countless repeating brutal tax collecting stories. Look back distance away in 1764. British government imposed several new taxes, including tea tax, upon its 13 colonies in North America, triggered strong opposition and eventually resulted in a war of independence. This is a confrontation due to wrong conduct. There's another type of wrongdoing. As close as present, the global financial crisis in year 2008 finally urged industry to rethink the concept of leveraging. The world's central banks collaborated to implement quantitative easing to save economy. As this massive monetary policy worked, central banks were about to implement their deleverage process of pulling liquidity from the system. However, unfortunately, 95% of world nations had been deeply in debt as the treasury trap in democracy system lured the leaders to live in a non-stop government budget deficit mode. When US Fed started to reduce bond purchase, the 2020 COVID-19 broke out and forced every government to borrow as mad again. In the first PowerPoint, please, PowerPoint 1, you can see it shows, there you go. The second one, please. Next one. Yeah. It shows an unprecedented severe global debt status. Global debts were US dollar 255 trillion in 2019, estimated to reach US dollar 258 trillion at Q1 2020. Among the whole global debts, the government debts, the purple portion in the middle, tripled during past 20 years. It shows that national leaders seldom adopt the prudent balanced budget principle, nor utilize the tax revenue with intelligence, as just described. There are only handful exceptions. Singapore is one clear model that we should study. I think it's fair to say most leaders, democratic or authoritarian, turn to view winning and staying in power as their personal priority. tend to yield to voters' requirements, disregard budget discipline, choose the easy way out, raise debts to meet deficit, and leave the burden to future generation. All the theory of good practice in financials remain just theory. Now let's look at Taiwan. It had been almost 40 years since the direct election of presidency, which gradually formed a Taiwan status as a beacon of democracy, of human rights model in Asia. Are we as good as perceived? To me, of course not. Tai Ji Men case alone exposed the deep and wide illness of judicial taxation system, which never been overhauled thoroughly. In past 30 years, Taiwan government had 21 years budget deficit, as you can see in PowerPoint 2. Please, yes. Yeah, I think the line in the middle is the 0, and everything below that, all those dots, they are the years of deficit. And as a result, government debts surged from NT dollar 1.9 trillion in 1996 to NT dollar 7.1 trillion as of today. It's more than 3 times. Again, the root of problem is leaders' mindset and the lack of reform, which actually result in the entire loss of government competitiveness of Taiwan. I can use 2 evaluation reports to prove it. In year 2015 and 2016, American and European Chamber of Commerce, Taiwan, presented a white paper which include concern and recommendation about Taiwan taxation system and practices. Their recommendations were exactly the same as proposed by the local legal and the tax reform alliance. And now 6 years passed from that time without any improvement. The World Economic Forum, Davos, published the Global Competitiveness Report annually. The rating utilized 12 global competitiveness indexes. To me, after 1949, the mainland Chinese regime and the local people here did work hard and achieve amazing results. Taiwan ranked number 12 out of the researched 141 nations in 2019. Please go to PowerPoint 3. Thank you. Here it's very small, but you can see on the left-hand side of the corner, Taiwan is over there. Okay, so however, when you review individual indexes, the worst to perform are government efficiency items, especially check and balance part. Please go to PowerPoint 4 and 5, 6. Yeah, this is PowerPoint 4. So which shows the 12 pillars, 12 indexes. The next one, please. Yeah, this is the whole page of indexes, and try to remark those ones that belong to government efficiencies. Please stop at the last page. Yes, so I can read for you. For example, judicial independency, we rank 42. Efficiency of legal framework in challenging regulations, 51. Freedom of the press, 37. Efficiency of legal framework in settling disputes, 70. Government long-term vision, 79. Complexity of tariff, 88. All this information says clear. International analysis pointed out the poorly performed institutional functions of Taiwan all the time. Nations ranking between number 60 to 90 are, for example, Mexico, Colombia, Greece, Philippines, Croatia, Peru, Vietnam, Brazil, Argentina. The fact is, even with political party change hands 3 times, new leaders never consider the people's welfare seriously. Nepotism remains in the system. Hence, 2 key pillars of a democracy, rule of law, human rights, were not funded within public service sector. All this above blocked reform in judicial and taxation system and deteriorated nation's democracy. This explains the unbelievable drag of unjust Tai Ji Men case for 25 years. We are bravely dealing with an iceberg of systematic malfunction. I call the nation leaders to search their conscience, go to basic human rights spirit, deal the competitiveness issue of the government. And resolving the unjust Tai Ji Men case now is your first task to start the right path. To end my sharing, I would like to pay respect to friends from Tai Ji Men and Taiwan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution and this very interesting and detailed analysis from an unusual point of view for us human rights activists, but this is complementary information that can be very useful. I would like now to introduce Mr. Andy Liu, Tai Ji Men Dizi, medical student at the Kaohsiung Medical University in Taiwan. The floor is yours.
Hello everyone. My name is Andy. I'm a medical clerk learning clinically in the hospital right now, and also a Tai Ji Men Dizi. I have joined Tai Ji Men since I was a child, and for more than 10 years in Tai Ji Men, I've seen my Shifu leading his Dizi to participate in thousands of charitable activities promoting love, peace, and conscience around the world, spreading positive energy and encourage others to join in. So seeing so many people around me, including my family, are all involved, I would surely not be absent. So for example, when I was only 5, I joined the activity education trend of human rights for world citizens. And then in 10, I participated in the promotion of global online endorsement of declarations for human rights of world citizens and peace. And currently, I'm working on the International Day of Conscience. So it has been involved in so many charitable activities during the process of my growth that the concept of exerting myself to help others is deeply rooted in my mind. So that is also the reason why I chose to become a doctor, because a doctor can rely on his profession to protect people's health, which is the basic element of happiness. However, Tai Ji Men, the group teaching me love, peace, and conscience, and traveling around the world promoting cultural exchanges, spreading the seeds of love and peace, and has been recognized by many people at home and abroad, has been under the persecution of national violence, and it's been almost 25 years so far. In 1997, prosecutor Hwang sued Tai Ji Men for fraud and raising goblins and tax evasion. For this absurd prosecution, Kenneth Jacobson, a professor of law at Temple University, who is very familiar with the judicial system in Taiwan and the United States, commented that it is not due process to accuse a human being in a civilized society of raising goblins. The mere statement of that would cause individuals and should cause individuals to question the insanity of the prosecutor, and in any court of law, such an absurd allegation would be thrown out. But unfortunately, such an obvious, absurd, and wrongful accusation still took Tai Ji Men Shifu and Dizi 10 years and 7 months to prove they're innocent. On July 13, 2007, the Supreme Court determined that there was no fraud, no tax evasion, and no violation of the tax collection law. However, although the Supreme Court ruled that Tai Ji Men was not guilty and did not owe taxes, the tax case derived from the criminal case continued to entangle Tai Ji Men. After another 10 years, finally in 2019, only the tax bill of year 1992 hasn't been settled. Other tax bills were all corrected to 0 because National Taxation Bureau recognized Tai Ji Men as a Qigong martial arts practice group, and the red envelope was a gift, not a cram school's tuition fee. So of the 6 years tax bills with the same factual evidence, only the year 1992 was determined to be cram school's tuition fee. However, last year, National Taxation Bureau and Administrative Enforcement Agency forcibly auctioned off the sacred land of the Tai Ji Men and nationalized it. And Professor Kenneth Jacobson, again, who has been studying the Tai Ji Men case for many years, said that it is inconceivable to him that there's even a discussion about 1992, because the situation and circumstances there were no different than it were for the other years in which there's been a negotiation down to zero of the tax bill. The fact that there's even a discussion and debate about whether tax are due for 1992 is to him a gross injustice. It is a violation of the rule of law. It is not seeking justice. It's an abuse of justice. However, even if the case has been nearly 25 years, and even if the sacred land of Tai Ji Men has been illegally and forcibly auctioned, and even if the effort and cost for upholding justice has largely exceeded the amount of that tax bills, we still refuse to pay the wrong tax bill because this is our principle, and this is also the last line for the happiness of the people in Taiwan. In the past 25 years, we have encountered many tax victims who have suffered similarly to us. Some people are forced to withhold wrong taxes every month from their meager salary, and some people's houses have been illegally seized for auction, and some have received wrongful high tax bills, but National Taxation Bureau refused to withdraw it. And these are people who are still struggling to survive. However, how many people cannot bear the pressure and choose to commit suicide? The bureaucrats know there are mistakes, but still insist on implementing an unjust tax system. If an individual encounters it, a family would break. And if the company encounters it, it will be hard for them to run the business, and thus eventually maybe close down or leave Taiwan. So as a result, not only will job opportunities be reduced, but it will also have a great impact on the industry and consequently seriously affect the national economy, harming the strength of a country. Therefore, we cannot compromise, and we are unwilling to compromise in order to make Taiwan's rule of law more advanced. Only in this way can we guarantee the well-being of all the people living on this land. I'm now a medical clerk learning in hospitals. It takes a very long training process to become a doctor who can be on his own, but I'm willing because once I succeed, I can guarantee people's health, which is one of the basic elements of happiness. This is what I learned from growing up in Tai Ji Men. And Tai Ji Men Shifu and Dizi adhere to the rule of law and uphold justice for a very long time. It has been 25 years, but we are willing to do it because once we succeed, we can protect the well-being of the people living in Taiwan and establish a good society. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andy, for sharing your personal experience with Tai Ji Men and how its moral teachings influence the choice of your studies to become a medical doctor, because, as you said, a doctor can protect people's health, the basic element of happiness. Thank you for your testimony. And now I will give the floor to the last speaker, so the last Dizi, Mrs. Hwang, administrator of a semiconductor engineering company in Taiwan. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Han, and today I'm glad to be here to share my story with you. The topic of my story is 25 darkest anniversaries. 25 years have passed since the Tai Ji Men case broke out, and I'm already 23 years old. December 19th, 1999, the day of the incident, was the first day of my parents' marriages. Many friends came to the wedding to deliver their blessing to my parents. No one could imagine that such incidents would happen on the next day of their big day. My parents met each other when they were practicing Qigong in Tai Ji Men. After they got married, they had me and my brother. We are a lovely family. Since young age, I have never seen my parents quarrel or fight against each other. I know the main reason is that we all practice Qigong to balance our minds and we have Shifu. In fact, in my adolescence, there was time I did not get along with my dad well. During that period of time, I found everything my dad did annoying. Until one day, I recalled Shifu saying about the meaning of the Chinese character Qing. Qing is to see each other's efforts and hard works. Suddenly, I realized that my dad is my family, and I should be more considerate of his contribution to the family. I started to learn how to look at his efforts and his advantages. Gradually, my complaints against him became less and less. And also, because we are both practice Qigong in Tai Ji Men, we have many common topics. Through our open mind talks, the iceberg between us gradually melted away. We have less and less quarrels, and our relationship has been restored. I'm very grateful that I have all these wonderful things, so I really cannot believe such unjust, unfair, and false things would happen in Taiwan, which is known as a democratic country. Obviously, Taiwan is such a good place. Could it be that Taiwan's democracy and the rule of law are merely title? Although on July 13, 2007, the justice cleared Taijiman's name and ruled that Taijiman was not guilty and did not owe any taxes. But is the delayed justice still justice? It took 10 years and 7 months from the beginning of the unjust case to the final verdict. How long is it? In the past years, on my parents' anniversary, they would be grateful for having this family. But what's more is the deep feeling of grief. The next morning, when the verdict was confirmed, my family got up early to buy the newspaper. At home, I saw my parents reading the news about Taijiman case with excitement and even tears. I was confused, so I asked them the story. Although I didn't quite comprehend their feelings, I knew that those unscrupulous officials are bad guys. At the moment, although I wanted to yell at them, my parents told me, "It's okay. The justice has cleared our name." After that, we sincerely believe that it was really okay, and every year after this, December 19th will no longer be a sad day. When I was 12, on the Double 10 day of 2010, my father and I happily joined the performance on the Kaohsiung Boulevard to celebrate the national birthday with many brothers and sisters. However, what I never expected was that on December 19th of the same year, I thought it would be a day for my family to celebrate together, but I actually went with my father, mother, and many brothers and sisters to take on the streets to protest the government's injustice. It's turned out that despite the justice had declared our name, the illegal tax bill derived from the criminal case were not revoked accordingly. And furthermore, last year, the site intended to be a Taijiman cultivation center was auctioned off and nationalized. When I entered the university, I participated in many forums relating to legal and tax reform and gained a deeper understanding of Taiwan's current legal and tax system. When I was away from home for studying, there's one thing I look forward to every year. It's every December 19th, I unite with my family on the Kaohsiung Boulevard. We work it together to put efforts into the rectification of wrongdoings. 25 years passed. My parents have also had 25 darkest anniversaries. We don't want to have another 25 years, but I will continue the crusade before redress. I'm glad to meet so many conscientious experts and scholars who are sincerely doing good for society, as well as the online audience for this forum. I thought I was related to the Taijiman case. is because I was a Tai Ji Men Dizi. But now I think I'm related to the Tai Ji Men case is because I'm a Taiwanese, even a world citizen. I sincerely hope that more and more people will understand the truth and unite together to stop the arrogance of the illegal officials and to prevent the next unjust, wrong, and fake case from happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing with us your family's experience and your own experience in this case. And we have now reached the end of our series of speakers. Time for the conclusions have come. And so we will move on and ask Peter Zoehrer from Prof in Austria to share with us the conclusions of this webinar.
Good afternoon, everybody. First, I want to thank you for letting me be part of this incredible webinar. Thank you especially to Dr. Massimo Introvigne, who invited me to this. And that is my second participation in your webinars. So I'd like to give just a short introduction. For 20 years, I'm advocating religious freedom, for religious freedom through the engagement of the media. I'm not speaking here as a scholar, like many of you, but rather as a journalist and a media professional. I guess that's why Massimo invited me, right? My main focus in my activities is freedom of religion and belief, and also freedom of press. I'm a member of the Reporters Without Borders, and freedom of press is almost equally important to freedom of religion. I will explain why. For example, now in Taiwan, Taiwan is ranking in the International Press Freedom Index 43. That's pretty good for more or less new democracy. Guess where China is ranking? China is ranking 177 of 180 countries which are listed among close to North Korea. So it is extremely important that this freedom of the press is also promoted. Why? Because without freedom of press, it will be very difficult to promote freedom of religion. I'm firmly convinced of the extremely significant role of the media in promoting human rights, specifically for freedom of religion and belief, which is the mother of all human rights, you can say. As Marco Respinti put it, my good friend, Marco Respinti, the Peter Winter editor. Thank you, Marco, for your great introduction to this. Well, the ideal combination of academic scholars and media professionals to make a sustainable impact in the struggle for freedom of religion and belief. That's the ideal combination. And so, therefore, we are extremely grateful to Peter Winter and for Massimo and Marco to very ably lead Peter Winter, manage Peter Winter. This has been an incredible success story so far, and Peter Winter is quoted in mainstream media in the United States and also now more and more in Europe. Marco mentioned in his introduction that freedom of religion and belief is the very foundation of democracy. Also, Massimo Introvigne, Dr. Massimo Introvigne, he gave us the historical context. And he spoke about traditional justice. I wasn't aware, I'm learning a lot here. I wasn't aware of this term, traditional justice. New democracies adopt to rectify the injustices of the past dictatorial regimes and punish those responsible for these injustices. Anyway, we have many examples in Germany, Austria, East European countries, Russia, China. In China, sadly, we witness a backlash. But these countries which I mentioned, they are differently implementing traditional justice. Many East European countries are quite successful. However, Russia still has many problems in traditional justice. Patricia Duval, she mentioned the Article 9 of the European Convention of Human Rights. So Article 9 and Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, this is the very foundation of democracy. She also mentioned the Jehovah's Witnesses. Also here in Austria, we had a very long struggle for the official recognition of the Jehovah's Witnesses. I was personally involved in this, and we finally succeeded. I think it was 2012. Now they are among the officially recognized religions. So Professor Tsan-Tu Lin and also Professor Giin-Tarng Hwang gave a brilliant insight in the history of the Tai Ji Men movement and the injustices they have suffered. What stuck with me from Professor Giin-Tarng Hwang, traditional justice indicates progress. The same laws for countries who were former countries with dictatorial regimes or unjust regimes. Now the same laws, they need a progressive implementation. There needs to be some progress in implementing these laws. It doesn't go from one day to the other. So there needs to be progress in implementation. And this is not always the case, as Tai Ji Men knows very well, actually. Miss Eva Mao, I was very touched by your testimony, Eva. She gave an example of what it means, what filial piety means. She went back to Taiwan for the reason to support her parents, help her parents. But not only this, she also is a patriot. She wants to help her country. And this is very commendable. Also, I had the same feeling with the other witnesses here who testified. This is very commendable because in many of the countries where this transitional justice does not implement fast enough, people just leave. Young, capable people leave. Many academics leave, and they just flee the country, go to the West somewhere. But this is called what we describe as a brain drain. I'm sure you know this term, brain drain. But I can see in the movement of Tai Ji Men, you have real patriots, and this gives a lot of hope, actually. So in conclusion, let me just say action is needed. Real action is needed. deeply and historically entrenched discriminative patterns cannot be changed fast or easily. They need international support by scholars, by human rights advocacy groups, such as CESNUR, Human Rights Without Frontiers, maybe even Prof. And also, should not forget Reporters Without Borders. International institutions such as the United Nations, and last not least, the media. The international media is needed. So let's act together. Let's make this resolution to act together and to help, not just Tai Ji Men, but to help this incredible nation, Taiwan. So now it just remains to me to introduce the video. There is a video now which will conclude our webinar. And I want to thank all the panelists for their brilliant contributions. This video is called the Pandemic Prevention Animation Trilogy. Thank you very much.
I think the time has come for just concluding and say hello and thank you to everyone, scholars, experts, activists, and Dizi, and giving you appointment to the next of our webinar. So hello, everyone.